Ray Calder thought he was tracking a killer. He didn't realize the killer had been tracking him the entire time. When Deputy Calder entered the forest to investigate a string of disappearances, he was armed with experience, evidence, and confidence. But as the trees closed in and the trail grew colder, it became clear he wasn't alone. What started as a search and rescue mission quickly turned into a deadly game of survival, one where every step brought him closer to a predator hiding in plain sight. In the remote northern stretches of Washington state, a vast wilderness sprawls for hundreds of miles, towering pines, jagged cliffs, and trails that wind into nothingness. It's a land of beauty and danger, where nature reclaims what doesn't belong. For years, Rockline Ridge was a quiet destination known only to dedicated hikers. But over the course of 14 months, 6 people vanished while trekking the same path. Each disappearance followed a patterned solo traveler, last seen near the midpoint of the ridge, then gone. No calls for help, no signs of struggle, no recovered remains. The authorities launched searches, but the unforgiving terrain and unpredictable weather limited their efforts. Eventually, the incidents were chalked up to natural hazards or tragic accidents. It became a cautionary tale, another reason to respect the wild. Then, in early October, a 7th name was added to the list. Tara Benson, a 23-year-old graduate student, had planned a weekend hike through the area. Her last known location was a photo she posted from the trailhead. After 48 hours without a check-in, her family reported her missing. Unlike the others, Tara's case triggered more urgency. She had a clean record, no history of recklessness, and was experienced in the outdoors. More importantly, she had logged her route in a hiking app, giving rescuers a narrow window to search. With public pressure mounting and online speculation growing, the county sheriff's department reopened the investigation. Locals whispered about strange lights in the woods, missing pets, and the eerie silence that settled over the forest in late autumn. Theories ranged from wild animals to hidden cults, but there were no answers, only fear. Deputy Ray Calder, a veteran officer with over 2 decades of backcountry experience, was selected to lead the new effort. He had a reputation for being methodical, calm under pressure, and deeply familiar with the region. Calder reviewed all 7 cases, noticing details others had missed: dates aligned with moonless nights, GPS data cut off in the same 2-mile radius, and the total absence of remains. It didn't add up. Animals leave bones, falls leave debris. But here, the woods had swallowed everything cleanly. Determined to uncover the truth, Ray volunteered for a solo expedition. He believed if someone or something was behind the disappearances, he had the best chance of finding it. He packed light, left early, and promised to return in 5 days. But what he didn't realize was that something was already waiting for him deep inside those trees. Ray Calder moved steadily along the trail, his boots crunching over fallen needles and loose gravel. The forest around him felt unnaturally still, muffled, like the world was holding its breath. The deeper he went, the more the trees seemed to close in, casting heavy shadows despite the afternoon sun. With each mile, the familiar trail markers faded, replaced by barely visible paths overgrown with brush. Ray was no stranger to isolation, but something about this place felt wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was empty, like even the animals had fled. On the second morning, Ray discovered what appeared to be a hastily abandoned campsite. The fire pit was extinguished but still held the faint smell of charred wood. A sleeping mat lay half unrolled, and a plastic water bottle sat beside it. Ray picked it up and froze. Scratched into the side, barely visible, was a name: Tara. It confirmed she had made it this far, but there was no sign of a struggle, no footprints leading away, just silence. Continuing deeper, Ray noticed small details beginning to unsettle him. Twigs snapped behind him with no source. Once, he thought he caught a glimpse of movement between the trees, a figure too fast and too far to make out clearly. But when he reached the spot, there was nothing. He tried using his satellite phone, but it blinked with static and error messages. His compass started acting strangely, spinning without pause before locking in the wrong direction. Late that evening, Ray came upon a clearing unlike any he'd seen before. At its center stood a tall, dead tree, stripped of bark and bleached by time. From its branches hung dozens of objects, bones strung together with vines, feathers woven into shapes, small wooden carvings of faces with hollow eyes. Ray stepped closer, trying to make sense of it. The bones were clean, arranged with precision. Too clean, too intentional. These weren't animal remains discarded by a predator. They were trophies. Ray backed away, suddenly aware that he was being watched. The feeling settled over him like a weight. Every tree seemed to have eyes. He didn't know whether he had stumbled upon some kind of ritual site or something worse. But one thing was clear: he was no longer alone in the woods, and whoever had been following him wasn't hiding anymore. Ray pushed forward with a new sense of urgency. The forest had changed. What once felt like open terrain now closed in around him, every step pulling him deeper into unfamiliar territory. He no longer trusted the trail, relying instead on instinct and subtle shifts in the land. Hours passed in tense silence. His senses sharpened to every rustle and flicker of movement. Then, just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, he spotted something unnatural: straight lines among the trees. A structure set half sunken into the earth, camouflaged with branches, mud, and debris. From a distance, it could be mistaken for a fallen shelter or a hunter's blind, but as Ray approached, he saw it was more than that. It was a cabin, weathered, rotting, but still intact. The windows were covered in filth, one crack just enough to catch the fading light. No path led to it, no smoke rose from its chimney. It was as if it had been hidden deliberately, waiting. Ray circled the structure, careful not to disturb anything. He found a door partially ajar and stepped inside, weapon drawn. The air inside was heavy and sour. Dust floated in narrow beams of sunlight. Along the walls were layers of paper maps, newspaper articles, and photographs, all pinned in overlapping chaos. He recognized some of the faces. They were the missing hikers. Dates and times were scribbled beside them in red ink, tracking their disappearances. One paper had only a single word written over and over: watch. In the corner, under a tarp, Ray found a trapdoor. He hesitated, then lifted it. A narrow staircase led underground into pitch blackness. The smell grew worse, a blend of decay and mold. He descended slowly, flashlight in hand. The basement was crude, carved into the earth. What he saw next confirmed every fear. Folded piles of clothing, each carefully stacked. Rows of driver's licenses nailed to a wooden board. A table covered with hunting knives, some rusted, others freshly cleaned. In the far corner, a crate filled with memory cards and camera equipment. Ray didn't linger. He took the cards, snapped photos, and climbed back into the daylight. He now had proof, but the phone still couldn't reach a signal. As he prepared to leave, he noticed something chilling outside: a fresh set of bare footprints in the dirt, circling the cabin. They hadn't been there before. Shadows lengthened as dusk settled over the forest, and Ray knew he couldn't linger. He moved away from the cabin, following what he hoped was the original trail. But the woods had shifted around him. Trees that should have marked familiar turns now blended into the undergrowth, and the path dissolved into a tangle of roots. He felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking his every step. Each crack of a twig sounded like a footfall. Every gust of wind felt like a whispered warning. By nightfall, Ray reached a shallow cave tucked beneath a rocky ledge. He blocked the entrance with fallen branches and settled in, determined to keep watch. His flashlight revealed clusters of animal traps arranged just outside, carefully concealed beneath leaves. The glint of metal jaws sent a jolt through him. Someone had planned to catch him. He spent hours scanning the tree line, but nothing stirred. When he finally drifted into a tense half-sleep, he awoke to a distant, rhythmic tapping, something striking the rocks in the distance, a slow, deliberate signal. At first light, Ray ventured out to investigate the tapping and discovered a series of tall, carved poles rising among the pines. Each was painted with crude symbols, spirals, lines, and a circle with a single dot at its center. They formed a rough circle around a clearing, their posts stained dark at the base, as if something had flowed down them. Ray traced the symbols with his fingers, feeling the grooves. They weren't random. They were a map, coordinates for his route, maybe traps to avoid, or perhaps markers of victories claimed by the killer. With renewed determination, he followed the pattern the symbols suggested, winding through the forest until he stumbled onto a narrow stream. The water's constant flow felt like a lifeline. Ray knelt to refill his canteen and noticed footprints in the mud, his own, but overlapped by larger prints heading upstream. The killer was leading him, setting a trail of breadcrumbs laced with danger. He considered turning back but knew he couldn't. There was still a chance to find the missing campers, or at least the evidence to stop this nightmare. As he moved alongside the creek, the forest seemed to pulse with anticipation. Mossy banks gave way to a sharp drop-off, where a fallen log formed a bridge over churning rapids. Ray paused, heart pounding. knowing that on the other side lay either freedom or the heart of the lair. He crossed carefully, every nerve taut. Halfway over, a twig snapped under his boot, and he froze. In the sudden silence, a low whistle echoed through the trees, a signal, a mockery. He sprinted the last few paces and reached solid ground, breath ragged. Ahead, obscured by ferns and saplings, was another shelter smaller than the cabin but clearly in use. A flicker of movement through a window confirmed he was not alone. His hand went to his gun, mind racing. He had found the killer's inner sanctum, and this time there would be no escape. Ray crouched low behind a boulder, watching the shelter with silent intensity. The structure was crude, built from salvaged wood and moss-covered stone, blending almost perfectly into the forest. Smoke trickled from a hidden vent near the roof, and through a slit in the wooden wall, Ray spotted movement, a silhouette pacing slowly, deliberately. Every step the figure took felt rehearsed, part of a routine shaped by solitude and secrecy. Ray didn't move for several minutes, waiting for the right moment. But nothing changed. The killer didn't come out. He didn't leave. It was as if he knew Ray was there. Ray finally withdrew, retreating back into the trees to find higher ground. He climbed a ridge, hoping to reconnect with a signal. At the summit, the trees thinned, and a weak bar of reception flickered on his satellite phone. Frantically, he transmitted his coordinates and a short message: suspect located. Solo. Request immediate extraction. Then the signal dropped. The air had turned colder. Mist slithered through the underbrush, shrouding the world in gray. As Ray prepared to descend, he noticed a thin string stretched across the trail ahead, an almost invisible tripwire. Carefully, he stepped over it, realizing too late it was only one of many. Around him, the forest had become a web of traps, hanging nets, pressure plates, and sharpened stakes hidden under foliage. He was surrounded. Every direction led to danger. Somewhere behind him, a distant sound cracked through the trees, a rustling sprint, not from an animal, but from a man. Ray turned, weapon drawn, and caught a glimpse of him. The killer, tall, thin, skin like leather, face streaked with dirt and ash. He stared at Ray for just a second. Then he vanished again into the fog, slipping away like a ghost. Ray pushed forward, weaving through the traps, heart pounding. Hours passed before he heard the thrum of helicopter blades slicing through the air. He broke into a clearing and fired his emergency flare. The red light arced upward as the chopper hovered into view. Rescue had arrived. The extraction team pulled Ray into the helicopter as he pointed back toward the woods. But when they reached the location, the shelter was gone, burned to ash, covered with branches, erased like it had never existed. The bones, the IDs, the cameras, nothing remained. Back at headquarters, Ray submitted the memory cards. The footage showed hikers walking, laughing, unaware they were being hunted. And in one final clip, filmed at night, Ray's tent appeared. The camera zoomed in slowly, from just a few feet away. He had been watched the entire time. The killer had chosen to let him go. Why remained a mystery. But one truth was clear. Deep in those woods, something still waits.